All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the 1883 Speaker Series. My name is Mike Wozniak. I'm the Coordinator of Leadership and Programming in the Student Involvement and Parent Programs Office. Each week, we invite a campus or community leader to talk about how today's student can develop their leadership skills, as well as other advice regarding personal and professional development. We hope you learn some valuable lessons in the next 18 minutes and 83 seconds. For today's speaker, please join me in welcoming the Provost of UND, Dr. Eric Link.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Testing. You can hear me. So I was threatening just a minute ago that if no one sat in these front seats, I was going to move up there and do it up there, and I was told I wouldn't be on the camera for those live streaming. So to everyone live streaming, all two of you, here we are. Thank you so much for coming out this afternoon. I am honored to be a part of this speaker series. And I'm a bit intimidated because the four speakers that have gone before me have been amazing and inspirational. And they have said such great things. They have set the bar so high that I am no longer going to do the pole vault competition. It's too high for me. I am switching sports. It's long jump from here on out. But thank you to all of the speakers who have been so inspirational leading up to this moment. We're going to set the bar low because there's no bar. I'm long jumping. And I'm going to offer you a few thoughts today over the next 30, 40 minutes, however long this lasts. Wait, 18 minutes, 83 seconds, that's right. Thank you for coming. About 15 or so years ago, I was, believe it or not, invited to give a talk very much like this. I have spoken on leadership in a number of different capacities a number of times in my career. And it's always an honor, it's always fun to put these presentations together and to say, well, based on what I know now, what could I share now that might be of some value? So this is about 15 years ago, and I was giving this leadership talk, and then and it went fine. No standing applause or anything like that, but it was fine. We had a good time, but then there was a Q&A period, which we're not having today. But there was a Q&A period after that, and I was doing some Q&A with the audience, and someone in the audience raised their hand, and I said yes. And they said, what would be the book that you have read that you have learned the most about leadership from? And I had never thought about that before. It's a question I should have expected, I guess, but I wasn't expecting. So there was this long, awkward pause on the stage, and then I said, you know what? I know this is going to sound silly because I'm an American Lit professor, but I've probably learned more about leadership from reading Moby Dick than any other book I have read. And of course, that led to some great dialogue. We had a lot of fun with that. So I am going to share today, later in our 18 minutes and 83 seconds, why I answered that question the way I did. But you're going to have to stay for the full 18 minutes to get to that particular answer. I will say that when you read books on leadership, they often have a chapter in which they discuss leadership styles. It seems like if you're going to write a book on leadership, how to lead a department, how to lead this, how to lead that, inevitably when you sign the deal, there must be some secret agreement that you have to have a chapter on leadership styles. And I have been just much earlier in my career, I had just been named a chair of an academic department. And the entire mentoring I received to be chair of that department, I was in the third year of my career. I was an untenured assistant professor, and the dean had asked me to step into the chairpersonship of the largest department on campus, with programs in English, French, German, Spanish, journalism, theater. Great, I was happy to do it. I was excited for the opportunity. The sum total of mentoring I got was the dean handing me a book saying, how to lead a department. Said, good luck, here's the keys to the car. Now, for Gen Xers like myself, this is not an uncommon thing because that's how we learned a lot of things from our boomer parents. Oh, you want to know about this? Here's a book, right? That was the talk for Gen Xers. So I read the book, and chapter 2 or 3 of the book was on leadership styles. And what was interesting about this book and about many others that I have read since then is there seems to be something about dividing all of humanity, or at least all of leadership, into 4 quadrants. And for some reason in this particular book, it was you're either like the bear or the antelope, or you're the rabbit, or you're the gazelle, or something like that. And I found the chapter entertaining, and I don't think I learned anything from it, but it was fun to read. And I've thought back on that book a number of times in my career, because when I've been asked in subsequent leadership talks in Q&A sessions, well, you know, talk about your leadership style a little bit. My answer is that I don't find leadership to be easily quantified into 4 quadrants, that it just seems a little too artificial to me. And so they say, well, then what kind of a leader are you? And I say, you know what? My leadership is a product of trial and error, of trying to look at what smart people do and do what they do, and look at what mistakes some people make and try to avoid those mistakes as best I can, and along the way, pick up a little life lesson here or there, and it's just a jumble. But that suggests an opportunity for us here today. Now, first of all, I don't know if you know who this is on the screen. If you do know, don't shout out, because the quiz will be at the end, right? So I will explain why I chose this particular slide at the end of our 18 minutes and 83 seconds, after, of course, ruining the ending of Moby Dick for you. Oh, and by the way, if you're sitting there going, don't spoil the ending of Moby Dick, I was just about to read that. No, you weren't. That's a lie. You weren't about to read it. You didn't read it in high school. You skipped it in college. You read the Wikipedia summary. So guess what? I'm ruining Moby Dick for you here today. I'm also going to ruin Hamlet and a couple other things. So just get ready. It's spoiler alert time. Run if you need. Anyway, a number of years ago, as another little story to get us started here, a number of years ago, I was listening to NPR on, for the students in the room, when you take a job as a professor, you're obligated to occasionally listen to NPR. It's part of the contract. So I was listening to NPR, and this was probably 10 or 12 years ago. It was quite some time, but it just stuck with me ever since then. And I was listening to this music critic. It was a conductor being interviewed on, well, whatever conductors get interviewed on. And the conductor who was being interviewed by NPR made a very interesting point. He said, and I can't quote him, it was 12 or so years ago, but he said something like this. He said, you know, the problem I have with American music reviewers, right? People who go to symphonies and then write reviews afterwards for the New York Times or whatever they're writing a review for. He says, the problem with them is that they say things like this. The 4th movement didn't have enough flavor. It needed some special sauce. And the conductor said, I don't know what to do with that. What am I supposed to do as a professional conductor hearing the criticism it didn't have enough flavor or special sauce? The conductor said, what I like about European music reviewers is they will listen to the same performance, and their review the next day will say something like, the 4th movement was played too slowly, and the horns were too muted compared to the percussion. And the conductor said, I can do something with that, right? That tells me something. I can make adjustments if I want to. So I start there today because in doing our long jump rather than our inspirational pole vault today, I have compiled 17. We're going to get through them all. Yes, we are. We're going to go fast. But 17 just tips. The idea here is not so much to do something witty or inspirational. I can't do that for you. But I said, what if we took a different approach today, and what if this was a classroom? And we were just saying, I would like to be capable of leadership. I would like to be considered for leadership roles. I'd like to be able to lead. How do you do that? What do I have to do that? Now, every one of us in this room would answer that question a different way. but I'm going to answer it 17 different ways along the way and try and give a little bit of practical advice and maybe some not so practical advice as well. Let's start with one more disclaimer. Most of my advice here today is going to be geared towards leadership when you are leading others, when you are leading a unit, when you have a team that you're trying to build some momentum towards the completion of a project and so forth. There are all kinds of ways to lead. There's lots of leadership models out there, but we're mostly talking about times when you're working to advance the cause of an institution, a mission, a university, a unit, a team, that sort of thing. So that's what I'm focusing on here today. All right, if you don't know this, you know who this guy is, right? If you haven't watched the Lonely Island video, I'm not recommending it, but it's not for kids. But the one they did for SNL a few years ago where, I'm the boss, it's quite funny. It can be at any rate. But I wanted to start here today because being the boss is a title. Being the boss does not make you a leader, right? We want to talk about leadership here today and the qualities that we embody when we want to be doing good leadership work. You may find yourself right now the boss of a team, a group, a unit. You may someday find yourself the boss of a group, but being bossy is not leading. Being the boss is a title. Leadership is a privilege. Leadership is a quality of character. Leadership is an approach. So that's what we're going to focus on today. Now, having said that, if you are promoting synergy like a boss, that's okay. You're allowed to do that, right? You don't have to be bossy to do that. Number two, don't be a horrible human being. Can we start there, right? I mean, it goes without saying, none of us want to be horrible human beings, but most of the leaders that you probably admire, that I probably admire, that leaders we aspire to be, are probably not, at least as far as we know, horrible human beings. So, my first tip to you, if you're a horrible human being, don't be a horrible human being. Try not to be a horrible human being. That's the first step. Vampires generally don't make great leaders. Okay, so here's the first novel I'm going to ruin for you, The Sea Wolf by Jack London. How many of you have read it? Show of hands. Just me. Perfect. So you'll have no idea if I'm ruining this story or not, but Wolf Larsen is the antagonist, the bad guy in this novel. He is a ship captain, and he rules his ship with an iron fist through fear and intimidation. It's all about, well, you see the quote up there. I'm not going to read it to you, and I don't have my glasses on, so I can't read it off the screen here. But it's all about the yeast eating the yeast, right? That's what life is about for Wolf Larsen. Who can eat the most and win the most? This is probably not a winning attitude for a successful leader in any dimension, right? It may make you a boss. It may make you powerful. You may take some kind of egocentric pride in being the bigger person, but that's not a characteristic of great leadership. Vampires live off of the nutrition provided by others. If you look at the people you as a leader are tasked with leading as resources to be consumed, then let's shift our attitude a little bit, right? We'll talk more about that in a little bit. But vampires, probably not great role models for successful leaders. Take responsibility. You've all heard this before, but this is critically important. You've heard the cliches, right? Good leaders take responsibility or take blame, and they give credit. And giving credit is the next slide, right? This is such an important principle of good, sound leadership. And so if you're saying there, I want to be a leader, I want to be successful, if I'm taking all the blame and giving all the credit to everyone else, how will I get a raise? How will I get promoted? How will everyone know that I'm amazing? They will know, right? The great thing about working in a unit, working as a team, when you do good work, it will get recognized. Maybe not by everyone, maybe not all at once, but you will sleep well at night knowing that you did right by the people who you are tasked with leading. Give them the credit. You take the responsibility. Eisenhower knew this. There's a great, I can't read it, I think it's from 1965, is the date right? Wonderful essay by Dwight Eisenhower on what is leadership. It's only about 5 pages long. You can Google it and read it. It's pretty inspirational, and there's a lot of interesting nuggets in there from Eisenhower's life. But Eisenhower, here he is in a picture speaking to some paratroopers. He understood that the quality of character that a good leader has is going to be reflected in that leader's ability to lift up others and to take responsibility for the decisions made by the team. That's important, right? If you find yourself in a leadership situation and something doesn't go as it's planned, which, believe it or not, happens on a daily basis, right? If you're just pointing fingers like that gentleman in the previous slide, the respect you will earn as a leader will plummet precipitously. Give credit, take blame, take responsibility. All right, you are seeing here a picture of a robot that is shaped to look like the author Philip K. Dick. I don't know if you can see it, but the back of the robot's head, the android's head, is popped open, and you can see some of the wires. Interesting side note, I actually worked with a colleague at another university who was part of the team that built the Philip K. Dick robot. Now, if you don't know the story, first of all, if you don't know Philip K. Dick, I can't help you right now. There's too much, right? One of my favorite authors, and I've studied and spoken about him throughout my whole career, just a fascinating individual. But Philip K. Dick, about 20 or so years ago, he was passed away, but about 20 or so years ago, a team of robotics experts and computer programmers got together to build a life-size replica android of Philip K. Dick that you could have a conversation with. Talk about ChatGPT, right? So this was 20 or so years ago, and the Philip K. Dick android would travel the country going to different conferences, and you could walk up to the android and you could have a conversation. Sad story is they used to make, the android used to travel, they would dismantle it and put it in suitcases and go on planes to the next conference. On one of those plane trips, the head disappeared. So there is no more head. It's somewhere, make no mistake, some weird collector out there has the android head of Philip K. Dick, and it's worth money, I assure you. I asked my friend who was part of the team that did this, I said, well, why didn't you build another? But he was a very kind of, egghead, nerd, computer science guy, and he was like, we did that. I'm not gonna do it again, I'm doing other stuff. We already did that, we're moving on. But the reason he's on the screen here is that he actually had an interesting little trope that he talked about in multiple books and in multiple essays, where he talked about the difference between being a human and being an android. And he said it's not whether you are biologically human that makes you a human. You can be a robot and be more human if you have empathy, if you are able to appreciate the life that others are experiencing, and you can relate to them on that personal level. So for him, you needed to be a human. I'm getting the signal that I've got like 2 minutes left. We're getting through this, trust me. Have empathy. Don't be an android. Don't be a robot. Understand the people you're working with. Don't listen to ghosts. I'll tell you why. You have to do a lot of listening when you're a leader, and you should, right? If you're doing all the talking, like I am right now, you're not listening, you're not learning. Listen, but ghosts have agendas. Hamlet ended as a tragedy because Hamlet listened to a ghost. Ghost said, I'm the ghost of your father. I was murdered. Take revenge on me. And at the end of the play, I'm spoiling it for you because you haven't read Hamlet. I know. And here you go. Everyone dies, except for Fortinbras. There you go. Does it spark joy? You will find in leadership situations that you have to make a lot of complicated decisions about what you should focus your time and energy on. And when you are marshaling the resources of a team, you are actually trying to set direction for that team's energy and time. I had a friend of mine, we were talking once about leadership, and he said, you know, the trouble with leadership is not that you don't have, you know, that you have too much work to do. It's how do you put your time into the right work and make sure you're doing the right things. Make sure they spark joy, right? Make sure that, that they're the right things to put time in. And the converse to that is number 9, right? By the way, "Time is a fire in which we burn" is from the poem by Delmar Schwartz, but it was quoted famously in Star Trek Generations from 1994. Malcolm McDowell, who knows that? Just me again. Okay, 2 of us. Just as you have to respect your own time and be organized, you have to respect the time and energy of others. Leadership is a team sport. Make sure that we can bring the team together and recognize the gifts that they each bring to the team. Don't force the team to fit a certain model, right? Get to know them, know their strengths, play to their strengths. Use your resources wisely. Why? One of the things I learned early in my career, and I've tried to deploy this ever since, don't ask your team to follow you as a leader anywhere where you can't explain why we're doing it. Busy work is good for nobody. Being directionless doesn't help the team. It doesn't help the leadership moment. Be able to answer the question, this is what we're doing and why we're doing it. Then you can motivate people around a vision. If you don't know this song, it's from 1988. It's by the Godfathers, Birth, School, Work, Death. It's a great song. Google it. It's on YouTube. It's a post-punk kind of, you know, jangly guitar thing. Work-life balance. Respect the work-life balance of yourself and your team. Another lesson that I learned early in my career, and I try to apply, and I offer it to you as well, don't be afraid to say, I don't know. There's often this feeling, particularly among people who are in their first leadership experience, that just because they have the leadership title, that they're supposed to suddenly know it all. And you can make a whole lot of mistakes if you do that. A lot of good leadership is recognizing you know next to nothing. Surround yourself with good people, and as a team, derive good strategy, and you'll get good results. Whoops, hang on. The truth is out there, but so are the lies. By the way, this is X-Files references. You're getting this before your time? Trust. Trust is so important for a leader to build. If your team, if the people you are charged with leading, if they're following you and they can't trust you, then you will lose their confidence immediately. You have to speak the truth. You have to be honest and forthcoming and transparent. You got to have a sense of humor. One of the things I say whenever given the chance is, you know what? We take our work seriously, but we don't take ourselves so seriously. Even Jack Torrance, trying to murder his family in The Shining, can make a joke about here's Johnny. If Jack Torrance can do it, don't murder your family. But you can have a sense of humor in the workplace. Sometimes things don't go well. It's okay. Pick up the pieces, rally the troops, have a laugh, get a cup of coffee, get a Diet Coke, not me anymore, whatever. Get out. I would like to, any English majors in the room, I'm going to offer this as a freebie because I don't have time to write this article, but let's do a reading of the movie Get Out by Jordan Peele as a critique of micromanagement. When you micromanage, you send people into the sunken place, right? You are taking away their ability to be creative, be innovative, to have victory, to achieve results. Don't micromanage. We all don't know this guy, Branson. I'll finish the phrase, get out of the way. It's all about hiring people smarter than you, giving them good work, getting out of their way, and trusting them. So here's the review of the 16 we've done so far. So if you haven't taken notes, screenshot this, and there's your lesson. But I said we would end with a couple notes here. Try not to get everyone killed. The problem in Moby Dick is that the Captain Ahab was so filled with ego that he forced, through force of his ego and will, this group of sailors on a fool's errand. And what wound up happening is that everybody died except for Ishmael, right? Call me Ishmael. Someone had to live to write the book and tell the story of Moby Dick. Everyone else is dead. Now, I'm not suggesting that you're necessarily leading in life or death situations all the time, although some of us in the room on occasion do. It's not about, in a literal sense, not getting everyone killed. It's about not being so ego-driven that everything you're trying to accomplish as a team is about you. Colonel Curry talked a little bit about this in his talk a couple weeks ago, so you may hearken back to that. We'll end on this slide. So I said we'd come back to this. Does anyone know who this is? Anyone? Jerry Lynn Johnson. So Jerry Lynn Johnson is the conductor, the maestro of the Black Pearl Chamber Orchestra. And here's why I wanted to end on this note. She was once, early in her career, very successful and a very accomplished conductor. She was once early in her career interviewing for a conducting job, and she did great. She was one of 2 or 3 finalists. She did great. One of the people interviewing her, she didn't get the job. And she went up to the person and said, well, what happened? Can you give me some feedback? And the person said, I can't quote it, but this is the story. The person said to Jerry Lynn Johnson, you were amazing. Your credentials are great. You interviewed spectacularly. You just don't look like a conductor. So she channeled that and founded the Black Pearl Chamber Orchestra of Philadelphia, which is doing amazing work under the leadership of Jerry Lynn Johnson. So I'm going to leave you with this thought. What does a leader look like? It looks like you. Doesn't look like someone else. It looks like you. It looks like Jerry Lynn Johnson. It looks like Eisenhower. It looks like someone who has the wherewithal to just take a few little lessons about treating people with decency, empathy, being honest, having a little bit of vision, and being willing to own up to mistakes, take responsibility, give some credit. I'm out of time, but thank you so much for coming today. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks.
All right, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Dr. Link. Join us same time, same place next week as we have the President and CEO of the Community Violence Intervention Center, Koya Tompkins. Thank you very much.